feel like this is not sad enough. Mario Kart has a really high average track quality. Throughout the last, say, 20 years, I feel like you can count all the truly bad tracks on one hand. That's how little they mess up. But today, we're gonna need that hand, because I'm looking at every Mario Kart game and picking the worst track in each. Doesn't even necessarily mean these tracks are bad, they're just the worst the game has to offer. Oh, and maybe this goes without saying, but only Nitro tracks qualify, not retro tracks. Otherwise, we might see the same picks for different games, and that's boring. With that said, we begin of course with Super Mario Kart, where things definitely weren't so polished as they would end up being. There are many courses in this game which would easily be the worst track in every other game when lifted directly. And to make matters even worse, more track themes in this game automatically get 2 or 3 courses, making things blend together in a very boring way. It makes it so the worst of a certain theme automatically feels even worse than it would otherwise. For example, Donut Plains 2 is simply a way more boring track than the first and the third, so it quickly became a candidate for this video. Choco Island's theme isn't even that good or fun to look at to begin with, so the second iteration is definitely not an enjoyable course either. But the absolute worst in Super Mario Kart, I'd say, is Vanilla Lake 2. Not only is the layout just a simple circle, it's also the same as the first Vanilla Lake, just now with the ice broken in the middle. And that may sound minor, but it actually makes the course far worse. This water is very tricky to dodge in a way that doesn't feel fair, and there are also these terrible blocks of ice scattered around the course, which equally feel impossible to drive through during the first try. And as if all that wasn't bad enough, the entire surface of this course is slippery ice, which is always a mechanic I strongly dislike. So yeah, Vanilla Lake 2 is not only the worst track in Super Mario Kart, but probably the worst in Mario Kart history in general. Onto Mario Kart 64, which ups the track quality so much, it's honestly a little unbelievable. There are so many iconic and amazing courses in this game, all with their own themes and settings, no more repeats. But not every track can be Toad's Turnpike or Yoshi Valley. There are definitely a couple of courses here that are a tad too simple. Moo Moo Farm is really boring, although I guess it is at least inoffensive. Banshee Boardwalk is in a similar position, but maybe even a little better. One that's definitely worse though is Wario Stadium. It doesn't look appealing, it's ridiculously long, and it's pretty janky as well. It isn't all bad, I like the jump in the middle for example, but it says a lot that this is the only Nintendo 64 track to never be brought back, and that the developers later introduced a new track with the exact same name and theme, just a lot better. I mean, they would have to rework this entire track from the ground up basically to make it work nowadays. It really feels like a remnant of a lost time. And in a game with some amazing tracks, that will get you the questionable honor of worst track. Next is Super Circuit, which has a similar style to Super Mario Kart. While it is definitely not as bad, I will forever stand by my opinion Mario Kart just flat out doesn't really work like this. At least not in a way that can ever be compared to the 3D games. Fortunately, we don't have to compare it to the 3D games, just pit the new courses against each other. And while there are some courses that are distinctly better than the rest, like Sunset Wilds, there are also a lot that are about equal for me and frankly how unexciting they are. But one has to win out, and that for me is Snowland. Now, if you've only played this track on Mario Kart 8's Booster Course Pass, you may be a little surprised at that. While it's not the greatest track of all time or anything, it's a perfectly enjoyable course in that game. But don't be fooled, this was one hell of a glow up. In Super Circuit, Snowland is as bland a track as its name is. It's visually uninteresting, track design is uninspired, and it lacks any identity beyond snow level. It's the most bland track in a game with a lot of bland tracks, so it has to be the worst. We continue with Double Dash, where we truly start going from worst track to least favorite. Because let's be real, from this point onwards, no course is truly bad. That said, there must always be a worst one. But before I reveal that one, we need to discuss the elephant in the room. Baby Park. It's probably the most divisive track in series history, with some who absolutely love it for the pure chaos it brings, and some who absolutely hate it for how simple its design is. Personally, I'm in the first camp. Baby Park embodies what Mario Kart is all about, and I would not in a million years consider it among the worst tracks in series history, let alone Double Dash. Another candidate I considered for this position is Mario Circuit, because while it has some interesting things going on in between its predictable themes, every course in the game has, that isn't enough to save it. However, there is one track I think just beats Mario Circuit to the questionable punch, being Dry Desert. Again, it's not a bad track. This also has some cool elements like the sand pit, but overall there's too many simple turns and driving straight on. The layout is also just a simple circle, which may be Baby Park's biggest strength, but is just flat out unexciting here. Back to handhelds now for Mario Kart DS. While definitely a very big improvement on Super Circuit, being on the DS does mean that the general track quality I'd say is a little worse than Double Dash, although there are still some icons here like Waluigi Pinball, Peach Gardens and Tick Tock Clock. On the other end of the spectrum, I think Yoshi Falls is not exactly stellar. It's a simple circle with very little going on. If I'm being honest, I think Yoshi Falls is what people say Baby Park really is. It's just a little bigger and a lot less fun. Shroom Ridge is also not a great track in my opinion. We've seen this theme done a lot better before and since. But both of these at least feel like Mario Kart tracks. The same cannot be said for Figure 8 Circuit, which is straight up just what the name says. It's a little late in the series for such a tutorial-like track. The layout isn't even the biggest problem, I think. We've seen worse than a Figure 8. The problem is how this is straight up just a real-life race course, with barely any Mario theming. Why would I want that? We've now got courses set in real-world cities, and even those feel more like Mario locations than this one. One of the worst tracks of the modern era, and definitely the worst of the DS game. Onto Mario Kart Wii, which has undoubtedly ended up so beloved because its track quality is ridiculously good. I'd say that the entry for this game is probably the best track of the video, and it says enough that I had to break my intention to not go for the introductory, simple circuit every time, as Luigi's Circuit ends up as the worst track in the game. It's not even bad, it's perfectly serviceable, but compared to the rest of the game, it's too simple and not exciting enough. Since Mario Kart Wii has a lot of new elements with motion controls and bikes, maybe they figured they'd make the introductory track a bit simpler than usual, and that didn't do it too many favors. I did consider putting Moonview Highway here, as I think it's not too fun a track to drive on, it's a little cramped. But the general themes are strong enough to make it only a dishonorable mention and not the actual worst Nitro track in the game. And while I did truly mean my intention was not just to pick the first track of the game every time, I cannot do anything else but do the same thing for Mario Kart 7. Because again, the average track quality is so high here, and Toad Circuit is an outlier. Not only is it basic, it's also quite boring, which I wouldn't immediately say about Wii's Luigi Circuit. I mean, the most memorable thing about this course is the big Toad balloon, and that says it all really. My dishonorable mention here may be a bit surprising, but I've never enjoyed Rosalina's Ice World too much. Considering the name, a lot more could be done here to make this an exceptional track, but instead, it's a fairly basic snow track with Rosalina's name tacked on. Bit of a letdown, maybe that's a better word. Not a bad track, but a disappointing one, and that's also not an emotion you want to feel about a course. Onto Mario Kart 8, which thanks to its DLC has a lot of Nitro tracks to choose from. And while you would think the added development time would result in some higher quality tracks, that's not necessarily the case. Excite Bike Arena is a super cool reference, but as a track, it's not too exciting. It's literally just a circle with ramps scattered around. However, the fact that it's always different does for me save it from getting too monotonous, become more than a dishonorable mention. Another track I'm not a huge fan of is Ice Ice Outpost, which was again DLC on the original game. Track layout is kinda boring, with the two tracks that are really not that different, and the set pieces in this course are basically non-existent. I also find the shortcuts weirdly difficult, to the point I'd say they're not worth it, which results in a track without many exciting moments. However, the truly worst course in my opinion is Bone Dry Dunes. Visually, this is such a boring track, with a drab color scheme that's not inviting in the slightest. As a race course, it's also definitely among the worst in the game, with weirdly sharp turns that are more annoying than challenging and nothing to really elevate the track beyond the acceptable. And for a game with as many good courses as Mario Kart 8, acceptable isn't good enough. And finally we have Mario Kart Tour, which does have several original courses which you may be more familiar with from the Booster Course Pass. Now, the city tracks are often criticized, and I can see why, as they're not the most interesting settings we've ever had. However, as time progressed, they only got better, and the latter half is pretty solid, which means we have to look at the first few to find the worst city track. New York Minute is incredibly boring, and London Loop is also all but exciting. But I've kind of been misleading you, because I think there is one Tour original track that's worse than any city course. Well, I consider it a Tour track, even though it technically isn't. Sky High Sunday debuted in the Booster Course Pass 1 week before it came to Tour, but it had been in the mobile game's data files for a while already, and it feels pretty clear it was made for Tour, not the Booster Pass. So I'm counting it. And yeah, Sky High Sunday is really bad. It's all in zero gravity, which means it's incredibly floaty, and you get boosts from things it doesn't feel like you should be hitting, like the railing in the middle of the track. The layout is also just a simple oval, which sucks, and the course design might just be the worst in the series. What even is this track? Some sort of alternate food dimension? It doesn't remotely feel like an actual place, and it's so bright and saturated, it feels more like a Fall Guys map than a Mario Kart track. I really dislike Sky High Sunday. It's the worst course made for Mario Kart Tour, I have no doubt about that. But enough about me. What do you consider the worst tracks in Mario Kart? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed my takes, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Mario content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.